The problem is with this platform that I don't understand it. Hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining me here for another video on my YouTube channel. Welcome, it's great to have you here, and let's get started. For those who are new to my channel, my name is Anais, and usually I make videos around a challenge called 100 Days of Kubernetes, where we aim to learn something new related to Kubernetes across 100 days, and me sharing with you here my journey on my YouTube channel. Now, for today's video, I thought it might be fun to look at different CI/CD platforms, different platforms that you can use to build and run your CI/CD pipelines. Now, CI/CD stands for continuous integration, continuous delivery. Those pipelines are basically ways that you can standardize processes that you need to do to deploy your application on different environments. So you can define everything that has to be done in CI/CD pipelines, and people not do the job manual one by one independently on their own machines, but you do it instead in one main repository through a CI/CD pipeline. Now, if you're completely new to CI/CD pipelines, then I highly suggest you to check out my previous video on GitHub Actions, where in the first part of the video, I just generally talk about CI/CD pipelines, what they are, how they work, why we use them, how we use them, what benefits do we need from them, and so on and so forth. And this video is going to be quick, and I'm mainly just going to rant and praise different pipeline platforms. So let's get started. Like always, if you prefer the written content, the blog post is linked below, so do check that out if you prefer the written content. My videos don't have an official transcript, but they have the blog post linked below with all the information that I'm also going to convey in this video. As you probably know, I use for a lot of my examples Datree. Now, Datree helps us to prevent Kubernetes misconfigurations from reaching our production environments. It's basically a check that allows you to see whether our Kubernetes manifests are configured correctly, which is crucial for security, to make sure to validate our manifests before we actually deploy them. Now, I'm using them for this example because as part of their documentation, they have a section over here which basically details all of their integrations. And as part of their integrations, they have an example for CircleCI, for Travis-CI, for GitHub Actions, for GitLab CI, CD, and for Jenkins. So I'm going to focus in this tutorial on GitHub Actions, on CircleCI, on Codefresh, and on GitLab CI/CD. So those are the four. Now, this is not a comprehensive comparison, just like how to get started and when I would use which, just so you get a feel for the platform and how the same the same step can differ between those different platforms. Now, to set it up, or to follow this tutorial, or to use my examples from the blog post, you just have to create an account with Datree. It's really straightforward. Here are the commands on how you can get started with Datree. It's basically just one curl command, and then you can run the Datree test command to see how it works. And when you check out CircleCI, you can see here's our first step. Now, you don't need the build step, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but this is the main step, the test step. Let me zoom in so you see that better. Okay, so this is basically what's going to run. The same two commands that you would use locally as well to get started. And I just want to run exactly that kind of step in those four different CI/CD platforms. Now, why am I not using Jenkins? Why am I not using Travis? Because I feel like the four platforms that I chose are highly similar in the type of companies that they would target, or type of companies and individuals who would use those platforms versus, to some extent they differ, for example, and I will go into more detail in that later. But that's ultimately it. So with Travis, for example, or Jenkins particularly, I feel like only certain types of companies use those. Individuals wouldn't necessarily go ahead and use that for themselves. That's why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. So let's get started with our repository. Now I have here this example repository on my GitHub account called CI/CD example. Very creative, I know, I'm very creative these days. Now, as you can see, I have several folders here. Now the manifest folder has just a deployment YAML file and a service YAML file. So I can also show you how you could test with specific YAML files instead of with the example that's provided by Datree upon installation. Now, we have here a .github/workflows folder. It's basically a folder within a folder. And here we have the GitHub example YAML file that has our first pipeline. This is our first pipeline. Now, once you basically go ahead and you add this into your repository, you would add this folder, this path, and you would add a file with your, a YAML file with your pipeline. That's how you would go about it, or that's how I usually went about it. And you can also have multiple workflows in the workflows folder, I believe. You can do that, and then you basically specify the steps on the job and everything that has to be done. Now, the good thing is with GitHub Actions, the documentation, I'm sorry, it's very bad. I think it's very bad for such a company to have so difficult to follow examples and documentation, but the community is making up for that. So you find lots and lots and lots of examples on how to set up your pipeline. It's very straightforward. You can basically just Google any type of pipeline that you need, and then you have it there, which is pretty amazing. So this is how you would do it, and then it basically only runs with the main branch right now. Like, it's specifying like only on push and pull requests of the main branch run this pipeline. Now, to use Datree, like this pipeline by itself wouldn't run because it requires the Datree token. Now, the Datree token allows you to access your Datree account. Now, you can access your Datree account either by running a Datree test command, and you will provide it with with a link through which you can access your account, or you can go to app.datree.io and you can log in. They also support no single sign-on now. So here's my account. I have 3 different policy checks, staging, prod, and crossplane that I've used before in the past. And what you do to access your account token is you go to settings, and here's your account token. Now you need to put that in your environment variables. You go to settings, environments, and then the funny thing is, so you set an environment, and within the environment you can then set secrets that belong to that environment. Now, here's the secret that I set. I just Datree token, and I provided a token. Now, I think this is a bit of a workaround of like you have environments and then you have secrets, and it makes it a bit more difficult to kind of differentiate it, because you can also probably have secrets that are not dependent on environment. New repository secret, yeah, which is not like, it makes it a bit difficult to follow the correlation between them from my perspective. And you also have to figure out where to find environments, but that's usually within settings if it's not more obvious. Now, if you want to run your pipeline, you can either push to a repository and it will run the pipeline, or you go to actions and then you can run the pipeline somewhere. You will be able to run it. Now, here are the different times that the pipeline ran. On the first push, the second push, the third push, and the fourth push. And I'm also very creative. My commit messages, very creative, very comprehensive. So if I go to this pipeline, I will see here that this step failed. Why did it fail? Run the 3 policy checks, because my policy checks didn't pass. That's why this command failed. So it ran the policy checks, and this all was supposed to work like that. Like, this pipeline was not supposed to run. I told it to fail if the command fails, and the command failed. And here I can see basically the output of the Datree policy check. Awesome. So I expect the same kind of output from the other pipelines. Now let's jump ahead to GitLab CI/CD and see how it works there. Now, for that to work, I had to create the repository, or link the repository within GitLab. I'm not sure how GitHub and GitLab communicate, but I think they communicate, and I'm very confused by that. Maybe they don't communicate because here's no 4th commit. Anyway, what do you do with GitLab? You add a .gitlab file. I called it .gitlab.ci. I don't know if you always have to call it away. And this is basically, I mean, this is the smallest step that you can have. Like, this is so straightforward. In my GitHub let's go back to my GitHub CI/CD workflow. I mean, I don't know if I needed really all of this. It seems like I needed all of that. But GitLab is a lot more straightforward in that this is how you would define the new pipeline within your root project. Very straightforward. And here you have to do the same thing. You have to set an environment variable. So how do you set the environment variable? Well, you go to settings, you go to CI/CD. It's a bit more nested over here. And then you go to variables. I think it's variables. You go to variables and you set the value, Datree token, and I set my Datree token. That's where you set it. Now it's nested within here, and then you can go back to CI/CD pipelines. And as you can see, here's one canceled one and one failed one. Now let's check out my failed pipeline and how it ran over here. Ooh, does it work? So I'm gonna check it out. It's a similar process and it provides me with the same output. So all of those pipelines, they provide you with an output message or like what's actually running, right? That's not a big wow moment. I mean, that's kind of what you would expect, so you can debug your application. Now the funny thing is that it used different kind of policy checks to GitHub. So as you can see within my fourth one here, if I check this out, I have 4 failed and 17 was passed, and here it's a bit different. So I'm not sure what it did by default. I have to look into that. But ultimately it's working and it's using the same kind of messages. So instead of using just the default one, the default example YAML file, I could use my own YAML manifests. So awesome. It's a bit more, I mean, with GitLab, I always find it a bit more difficult to find everything that's going on and like where I can find my resources and set settings, versus within GitHub. I'm used to GitHub, right? Like I'm used to here doing things through the GitHub UI versus GitLab. So I'm always a little bit confused when I'm using GitLab. It will never wear off, I think, and that's okay. Now, CircleCI. I have a confession to make. I was working for 7 months at Codefresh, and CircleCI is one of their competitors. Have I ever tried CircleCI? No. Did I think it was worth trying? Maybe. But I did not try it. So I used it yesterday for the first time. As you can see here, does it tell me when I last ran it? Somewhere it must tell me when I last ran this pipeline. But the problem is with this platform that I don't understand it. Like, I don't want to be harsh, but I don't understand what it does that GitLab or GitHub can't give me. I just don't understand it. If you know why you would use CircleCI specifically, what kind of advantages it gives you for $15 a month, and that's like kind of the starting price, $15 a month, then please do let me know in the comments, because I don't know and I feel bad for not knowing, but I just don't. Here's the dashboard. I mean, maybe if I would subscribe to it, maybe I would have more options here on the left. Maybe they just hide the options. I don't know. So if I go to projects, I have here all of my GitHub repositories, which I don't fancy. I don't like this because, I mean, it gives me a quick way to set up a new project, but I didn't tell CircleCI to know about these projects. I only connected it to the CI/CD example, and then for GitHub it just shows me all of the other projects. So I'm not too much of a fan of this page because I just want to have my specific project. I don't need all of this, right? Going to the dashboard, it shows me my previous runs, and that's okay. So that's okay. No, let's check out the test stage that failed. It provides me with the same kind of output, everything that I expected, maybe a bit less of information than the other ones. Maybe it's hiding some information, but ultimately it's the same information. That's okay. And here are the different steps. And I mean, they are not too beautiful. It's okay. It works, right? It's good. Let's check out, well, last thing. What is the last thing? Dashboard? Insights? Insights doesn't show much yet. total credits is how much it consumed. I think you have like 3,000 credits or something per month for free. I don't understand the credit system as well either. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't want to offend anybody, but I don't know. Not my thing. So, CircleCI, you put a folder with .circleci and you put your configuration in here. Now, you don't need this step, likely, because there's nothing to build. Like, I don't know why it's part of the Datree example. I don't think there was anything to build. So, here, I'm using this Docker image, so you can define your Docker image. I don't know, do you have to use the official images or can I just use any image? That's a good question to figure out for next time. And then I just tell it which commands to run. It's okay, it's a different kind of language to the others. It would be also interesting to go through their documentation and see like how many examples they have. I don't want to bash on anyone, but it's okay, it's good, it works. And last thing we have Codefresh. Quick disclaimer, I'm a little bit biased, just a little bit, because I used to work for one of those platforms that I'm going to talk about today, which is Codefresh. And they also have provided me by now, again, with a pro version, so I'm a tiny bit biased. No. Here, Codefresh. You start off the getting started page and then you start a project. Now, I started a CI example project, and within this project, you can have multiple pipelines. So I'm going to go ahead and use this Datree pipeline. Now, what you can do is to define your pipeline right here, right in. I can use the in YAML one from the repository, like the Codefresh YAML one here. But I could also just go ahead and define my pipeline in the UI. That also works. So I have two steps, a clone step that uses the repository, which I don't really need, and then a test step. Now what I did different here in this test step is that I told it to use the manifest, the deployment YAML file. I want to test within my main project, manifest, deployment YAML file. I want to check this for my misconfigurations, okay? So once I have set this up, I need to define the variables. And you can just define the variables here on the right under variables. You can set additional steps from the marketplace and triggers. I just like that it's right there and I don't have to click myself through it. Where you do have to click yourself through it though is setting up your integrations. That's something you will have to do. So you have to set up, for example, your Docker integration, your Git integration to get started. Those are the two main ones to get you started. So going back to my pipeline in my project, once you run it, you have a build and it shows you a really beautiful build. It shows you the different steps. And then you look at the output. And here's basically the second step. And this is the output. And as you can see, in this case, there are no failed rules because I used the amazing deployment YAML file that I already checked before I committed it for errors. But you don't know if people will actually do that, and that's why you want to use Datree, to make sure that even if people don't check their deployment YAML files for misconfigurations, that the CI/CD pipeline actually does it. Now, how would I use those different pipelines? It's a good question. Thank you for asking. Well, I would use GitLab if I'm using GitLab. Duh. No, sorry, that was condescending. I would use GitLab if my project is hosted on GitLab. Then it makes sense to use GitLab, and I have used GitLab throughout the entire time I was at Sevo, and we never had a problem with what you could do on GitLab. Now, we didn't have to have any fancy additional things like, where is it now? Like the GitOps platform that's provided by Codefresh. We didn't use that kind of stuff. So in that case, GitLab is perfectly fine. Similarly, with GitHub Actions, it does the job, right? Like, it's good. It's for what you need it, it's good. It's working, right? That's all you need in most cases. It's working. Yay! Like, hands up. There's so many platforms that don't work. So give them applause for working. Awesome. Wow. I'm being very ironic. I'm sarcastic and ironic. Anyway, so Codefresh, I guess they're partially competing with these platforms, but not really, because like you would use GitLab and GitHub if you're an open source or smaller company, or you just don't need fancy stuff. So, but if you're not, if you need more fancy stuff, then and you're highly cloud native focused, then Codefresh is amazing. And then you should probably use Codefresh, right? Yay. Now the thing is, they are also then competing at the same time with, from my perspective, something with Jenkins, right? Organizations that want to modernize themselves and move on and advance and get better in what they are doing. And that's what Codefresh kind of fits in. Now, I just don't know where CircleCI fits in. I just don't understand it. I just don't know. I mean, there must be lots of companies who find this very useful. I'm not part of them, and that's okay. You don't have to like everything you see online. You don't. It's okay. It's okay. You can look at something, be like, this is nice, and I'm gonna live my life. And this is good. So, yeah. This is it for this. This is it for this. Now that's it. That's the end of the video. I really hope it was useful. As always, please do leave your feedback, comments, suggestions, thoughts, anything you want to share in the comments below. Also, make sure to join our DevOps community on Discord. The link is community.100daysofkubernetes.io, so make sure to join there. Also, if you're into DevOps, please do subscribe to my weekly DevOps newsletter, where I share free online courses, resources from across the space right to your inbox on a weekly basis. Please do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel to make sure that other people see my content as well. Now, I hope you have an amazing day and an amazing remaining week. I hope to see you in one of my upcoming videos. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.